Welcome to Heart of the Lion. My name is Anthony Strongheart. What arouses women is mysterious. Mysterious and unabashedly confident and strong. But what's good for their long-term security, but it's not really security. It's about what feels good to them to be able to be in control of their environment so they don't fear for their safety is something antithetical. So what is good for them and their long-term safety is a man who is solid, principled, moral, and yet emotionally manipulatable by them, especially if he's only emotionally manipulatable by them and them alone. Then the woman will have complete safety and control. That man isn't going to go anywhere, and she can push him around and get what she needs out of him. But the problem is that situation that puts her in the driver's seat and puts her in maximum safety in her environment is not what turns her on. So she's got a dichotomy going on between what she's aroused to and what she needs to have in order to have stability in her life. And I think that is because the woman is so much built upon the feminine, dark, mysterious waters that always move. And so stability, while it is a good thing for the life, is not something that allows her femininity to flow. She needs that instability. And so there's a dichotomy between what allows her to be in her feminine and what actually provides her a good life. She's got a dichotomy with that. And I think for men, in order to be aroused, they don't need mystery. All they need is a decent looking physical body that's sexually attractive to them, and a few personality traits that err on the side of femininity, maybe somewhat submissive or somewhat relatable, that there's compatibility between them. And for each man, it's going to be just a little bit different on those little nuances, but basically some little emotional connection, some little relatability emotionally, mentally, personality-wise especially, and a decent-looking body, and that's all that they require. And so for a man, that's what he's always going to be looking for. But what gives him stability in his relationship is his ability to get the woman into her feminine mind frame. And when she is in her feminine mind frame, she will follow his lead. But if she's not in her feminine mind frame, she won't follow his lead and will cause chaos in his environment because she's bored, because it's not fulfilling her in a certain way. And so the man, in order to get that femininity out of his woman, needs to have an air of mystery. He needs to not be fully known by her. He needs to have that air of mystery. And in that way, he can allow that woman to be in her feminine, to follow him, to have more stability and order in his life. And so part of his task is not to be fully known by her. But the thing is, not to be fully known by her and the fulfillment of his sexual desire are not at odds. They're not at odds. So he can be sexually aroused by her, also not revealing everything to her, keeping her in a sense of mystery in her feminine, and those things aren't at odds. Whereas for a woman, the things are at odds, that in order to be stable for her, she needs to be able to manipulate the man, knowing him thoroughly, and in order for her to be sexually attracted, she needs to not know him fully so that she can be aroused, so that she can be in her feminine and freed into that. And so these things are at odds. Whereas I think for a man, what I was going to say just that, I was going to end on that. But I think what I realize now talking about it is that what is at odds for men is that men deeply desire to be able to be vulnerable with all the shit that has gone in their lives. But what they quickly realize is the whole world does not want to hear that. And if there's any portion of the world that is willing to hear that, whatever portion of that world that is willing to hear the true vulnerabilities of a man, that portion of the world, specifically with women, will not be sexually aroused by him furthermore. That vulnerability drives away the sexual reality of the feminine. And so what's at odds is a man's desire for love and the ability to be truly vulnerable and be accepted, and a man's ability to draw the feminine out of a woman and have stability in his life. That's what's at odds for men. Wow, it's so trippy, man. I was listening to a guy, and he was talking about a TED Talk where a lady was talking about shame, and a man came up to her. She wrote a book on shame, and a man came up to her at one of the book signings and said, that his wife and his 3 daughters got the shame book. And he said, my wife and my daughters would rather see me die on my white horse than fall off of it or come off of it. And it's interesting, in order to be able to draw the feminine subordination and looking to male leadership and following that leadership, following that plan from a feminine drive of love, that man had to be on his white horse and remaining a mystery. And so I thought that was very interesting. So as a man, the ability to be fully vulnerable and receive that love that we so desire, that acceptance that we so desire, that draw towards that, the fulfillment of that can only be had. Is this true? This is my question. That fulfillment can only be had by us giving that to ourselves, by our mothers giving that to us, by God giving that to us. And that sacred relationship cannot be maybe by other men giving it to us, whether it's our fathers, a really wise friend, a really wise counsel or elder. That sacred relationship cannot be had. Maybe it can. Maybe it can. I'm just curious about can that be had in a relationship, in a sexual relationship with a woman? And maybe it cannot be had. And maybe it doesn't need to be had. Maybe what the fulfillment of that relationship is really signaling is a lack of having that relationship with mother, father, or God, or all three. And maybe when that relationship is fulfilled in all three, maybe it doesn't need to be had in a sexual relationship, and the reason for the sexual relationship is something other than that. I think that's probably it. Very interesting. God bless you all. We'll see you in the next one. Thanks for tuning in to Heart of the Lion.